Hi, my name is Sarah Johnson, and I work in the Office of Accountability at Highline Public Schools, along with Catherine Sprigg and Ashley Berkland. We're trying out a new format for training this year. We've made one security training that will be good for the year. This training covers the generic information about test security and administration. This is part one of your training. Then for each test you administer, there will be a short supplemental presentation. The state requires all proctors to be trained on the proper procedures before each testing session. Even if you have administered state tests before, you need to be trained on procedures each year, both as a reminder and also because sometimes procedures change from year to year. Most of the content of this presentation came from OSPI. The voice of this presentation was added by the Office of Accountability at Highline Public Schools, and the content was edited slightly to make it one generic training for all of the state tests. Since this format does not allow you the ability to ask clarifying questions, please give any questions you have to your test coordinator, who can pass them on to my department. Thank you in advance for your time today and for your efforts in the coming weeks. There are many resources available on the OSPI website for teachers to use in preparing their students to test. Though solid instruction on the state standards is the best test preparation, it is desirable for students to be given a certain amount of practice so that they will be familiar with the format of questions on state assessments. Remember that test preparation activities should be viewed as a continual process, incorporated into everyday classroom activities, and not something that is only done prior to testing. Included in the online resources are sample passages, questions, anchor sets, test and item specifications, point total charts, scale score ranges, information on graduation requirements, and demos for use with students who will be using a translated CD. More links to resources can be found in the directions for administration. All test content, including but not limited to test booklets and accommodated forms, are confidential and must not be reviewed except to the extent necessary for administration of state assessments. Please make sure that you follow your test and security building plan. Tests must be locked up in a limited access location when not in use. Please verify student ID information if you don't know the student. Only staff members may carry test booklets from one location to another. Make sure that you can account for all secure materials within your care at all times. Ensure confidentiality of test booklets under your control. Ensure that students have access to what they need but do not have an advantage over others on the test. And provide appropriate allowable accommodations for all students. State law says that public school employees are expected to know and comply with procedures established by the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. The testing environment should be kept secure. No media is allowed in the testing environment. Should any journalists or photographers approach you, please refer them to the Communications Department. Post a testing do not disturb sign in any classroom where testing is taking place. Only approved electronic devices should be available to students. All other electronic devices must be turned off and kept out of view. Students should not have access to cell phones during breaks. Use of such devices automatically warrants a test irregularity with a possible invalidation. No backpacks and/or purses near the students. We recommend putting purses and backpacks in the front of the room. And staff should refer to district policy and avoid personal cell phone use during testing. Now we're going to go over some responsibilities. So teachers are responsible to teach students test-taking strategies, familiarize students with question formats, including multiple choice, short answer, completion, and standalone items. They are responsible to familiarize students with how to accurately fill in an answer circle, encourage students to try questions and tasks even if they are uncertain, help students to relax and be confident, and avoid excessive testing and coaching. It is important that teachers use test results appropriately, including maintaining confidentiality of individual students' results. A test proctor is a staff member administering a test. Before testing, as a test proctor, you should read the directions for administration, also called the DFA, including the directions to each subject area. Make sure that you become familiar with the text in the Say box. Also familiarize yourself with the test and security building plan, the test schedule, and accommodations needed in your classroom. Provide a positive testing environment and review the seating plan and prepare your room. During testing, please read the directions verbatim and follow the directions in the DFA. Do not deviate. Monitor students actively and report any irregularities that occur. After testing, please inventory and immediately return all test booklets to the school assessment coordinator. Also make sure you inventory and return to the school assessment coordinator all other ancillary materials, including glossaries, formula sheets, or trig tables if they were used for that assessment. Then complete and sign a test security assurance form, and provide feedback when OSPI emails out the proctor survey. So what is allowed during test administration? In general, anything that allows access to the test without advantage and encourages an accurate assessment of the student's real knowledge and abilities on their own without outside help. So you can reread test directions, but not the test questions, except in certain circumstances, out loud for any test as many times as students need. At the beginning of the test, we can remind students to complete all the questions. When they begin to turn in their booklets, we can reread the directions and say, check that you answered all the questions on each page. However, we cannot point out specific questions to complete or answer again. If a student asks for help on a question, we may simply suggest rereading the question and encourage them to do their best. Please do not assist students in answering questions. For the writing test only, we can define single words on the writing prompt in a way that ensures students understand. We can define any words or phrases on the writing checklist as long as we don't hint or imply how a student should write their response. Remember that students do have access to a dictionary during the writing test. Remember that it is not acceptable to review student responses or allow students to read their responses to you. And please remember to smile and make eye contact whenever possible. Actively monitor students during testing. Ensure that students are using a number 2 pencil. The scanners may not be able to read the responses if written in anything other than a number 2 pencil. This could affect the student's score. Please make sure that students are using a calculator and not a cell phone during tests where a calculator is allowed. Cell phones should not be out at any time during testing. For those proctoring the EOC Year 2 exam, ensure that calculators are in degree mode. Also make sure that students are not sharing their work, not using unauthorized tools, and that students are not writing on the inner half-inch of the booklet by the spine. And try to notice if students are in need of an extra break or need help navigating the pages. If a student or staff member feels that there is a potential error on the assessment or feels a question is ambiguous or has no correct answer, please make sure that they do not discuss the contents with anyone. The staff member should make note of the perceived error, include the subject, test booklet form, question number, and page number. They should then instruct the students to do their best and complete the assessment. Assure students that a remedy will be provided by the state if necessary. Do not attempt to provide a remedy yourself. The staff member should complete a test question ambiguity form and have it sent to the district assessment coordinator with the secure materials. Our office will then alert the state test coordinator, who will review the question and provide a statewide remedy if deemed necessary. Do not copy down any test content, share with colleagues, or transmit the information electronically, including text messaging, photos, etc. Ensure you know where students are testing and where they should go if they need extended time. When students are moved to a different testing location, a trained proctor must transport the booklets, calculators, and other papers. Students who are absent may make up the MSP in grades 3 through 8 during the testing window. Students taking the HISP or the one-day EOCs may not make up the assessment until the next test administration. Students arriving late can test if there's enough time to finish the assessment, if they have not had access or knowledge about testing materials, and reading the directions will not disturb others. Consult your school assessment coordinator for what to do with students who arrive late. During breaks, students should close their test booklets. Proctors should instruct students not to discuss the test. Students should continue to be monitored by staff during breaks. Students may be released to the restroom one at a time. They should not have access to electronic devices, including cell phones, during breaks. Should you, as a test proctor, need a break or need to leave the room for any reason, ensure that you have a way to contact a trained staff member to monitor your students in your absence. Students should never be left unattended with secure test materials. In the case of a fire alarm or other emergency, proctors should ask students to close their books, not discuss the test, and follow your school's safety plan to leave the building. In order to ensure consistent, reliable administration of assessments across the state, OSPI has compiled a chart of tools and manipulatives that students may access during the assessments. Manipulatives that are used during state assessments should not provide answers but should be familiar to students, used regularly in the classroom, and available where students can get them if they elect to use them. You must read the Tools and Manipulatives section of the DFA and understand the tools allowed and calculator policy for the assessments you will be proctoring. Any manipulative or tool not included in the chart should be considered not allowed. Requests for accommodations for exceptional situations should be completed to request the use of an accommodation that is on an IEP but not listed in the accommodations guidelines. Before testing, you will need to receive and sign out all test booklets and CDs. Verify that you have the appropriate materials for the content area you are proctoring. Verify that you have the correct booklet for each student and test, and document and track all the testing information somewhere. During testing, report any irregularities, errors, or defective booklets immediately. In order to report a perceived error on the test, remember that you notify the school assessment coordinator in person or over the phone of the perceived error, including the subject, grade, test booklet form, test question number, and page number. Instruct students to do their best, and the state will provide a remedy if necessary. If you come across a defective booklet, request a new booklet from the school assessment coordinator. Have the student continue in the new test booklet. Verify student ID information is on the new booklet. And return both booklets to your school assessment coordinator. Before students leave the room, collect inventory and ensure that each test booklet is signed. After testing, return and sign in all materials, including ancillary papers, or assign them out to the proctor of the extended time room. An irregularity should be considered anything that occurs during testing that is out of the ordinary or may have an effect on test scores. Examples would be students talking, sharing answers, using cell phones, textbooks, or computers when they shouldn't, having access to materials they shouldn't have for that test, disruptions in the testing environment such as a fire alarm or student altercation, etc. If you are not sure, please report it just in case. When an irregularity occurs, do what you can to correct the situation. Move the students or take away the cell phone, for example. Continue testing whenever possible. Report the irregularity to your school assessment coordinator immediately. When instructed by the school assessment coordinator, document the irregularity on the front cover of the test booklet in the notes box. Record the events on your test security assurance form and provide the school assessment coordinator with specific details of what transpired. The school assessment coordinator is then responsible to complete an irregularity report and mark the booklet Y for irregularity when required to do so, and annotate the irregularity on the pre-ID roster. An irregularity is not the same as an invalidation. Invalidations only occur after a thorough investigation by the district assessment coordinator. Never invalidate a test, but this will always be done at the district level. Here is your final checklist for before testing. This can also be found in your DFA. Pick up the booklets at the location designated by your school assessment coordinator. You will be returning the booklets each day. Make sure your DFA is in the classroom with the page marked for the directions for that day. Make sure you have the tools clearly identified for the subject area and available for students. Make sure the room is ready and anything on the walls that might help students answer a question is covered or removed. Place a testing Do Not Disturb sign on the door of the testing environment. Clear calculators if applicable. Verify that the calculators are in degree mode if you are administering the Year 2 EOC tests. And collect student backpacks and cell phones. This is the final checklist for after testing. When testing is over, account for all the test booklets under your care. Also account for all secured materials that were distributed, such as glossaries, formula sheets, trig tables, translated CDs, etc. Verify that all test booklets are signed and when necessary transcribed. Return all the booklets and secured materials to your school assessment coordinator. Booklets should be returned each day, even for tests administered on multiple days. Sign and return your test security assurance form. Uniform administration of state assessments ensures that no one student has an unfair advantage over any other student. Shown here are the estimated student working times per session for each assessment. As you can see, most assessments are estimated to take between 90 to 120 minutes per session. Reading, math, and science at grades 3 to 5 are estimated to take between 70 and 90 minutes. Please allow an additional 15 to 20 minutes for test proctor activities like handing out booklets and reading directions. Breaks are not included in the timeframes below. Follow the breaks as outlined in the DFA. Remember that tests are technically untimed. The estimated student working times shown here are for planning purposes only. Students may continue working until the end of the scheduled school day if necessary. However, they must finish on the same day they started and may not continue on another day unless specified in their IEP. Now we're going to do a quick quiz. For each scenario, decide if it's okay or not okay. First scenario, proctors allowed students who needed more testing time to carry their test booklets down the hall to the library. The answer is not okay. When moving students, proctors are to collect test booklets and they should be redistributed once students are seated in the new location. It is important to verify that the student is working in his or her own booklet and the new location does not have inappropriate materials on the wall for that particular test. Next scenario. Proctor observed the two students sharing information during the test. She collected the note passing between them and separated the students but allowed the students to continue testing. The response is okay but incomplete. This irregularity must be reported to your building coordinator ASAP. Remember not to invalidate a test yourself. Next scenario. A principal trained a proctor to scribe for a first-year ELL student. The response is okay. ELL students are allowed to have a scribe for math and science tests if documented as an accommodation in the ELL Assessment Accommodation Plan. This is allowed for ELL students who have developed speaking and listening skills before the academic skill of writing. Next scenario. Teacher inadvertently sees a test question and it occurs to him that he did not cover that content. He adds a problem to today's lesson plan. The response is absolutely not okay. If you legitimately see a test question through test administration, it violates the state code of conduct to use that information to try to improve test results, such as doing special instruction with students based on what you saw in the test. Next scenario. A student reports that when he turned in his test booklet, the teacher flipped through the booklet and told him that he had left a response blank. He was asked to go back and complete the test. The response is not okay. No one is allowed to review or read test booklets except when necessary during test administration. It is okay to repeat the direction to the whole class, saying when you finish, be sure to check that you have answered all the questions on each page, but you can't point out specific questions or tell a student that they left responses blank. If you have questions about testing, please refer first to your DFA. If you are unable to find the information or are unsure of the interpretation, please consult your school assessment coordinator. Your school assessment coordinator should refer to their coordinator manual. If they cannot find the information, they should contact us at the Office of Accountability, and we will do our best to find the information, including consulting OSPI should that be necessary. OSPI receives a large number of calls and will refer all calls from school staff to their district assessment coordinator. So please go through the correct channel to get your question answered most effectively. And thank you for your time. And please ensure that you get the test-specific information for the test you will be proctoring and review the tools allowed for that test. Have a great testing session.